Welcome back to Pawpaw Storytime. It is a lot earlier than what we normally do this, but I've got a lot of running to do today, and I don't know how late it's going to be when I get home. I want to make sure I get it done. Looks like I got a black eye, don't it? I don't. I didn't get very. I got less sleep than normal last night. I had to take Uncle Chris home in the middle of the night. I'm not going to get into all of that. Hey Nate, you want to come say hi to everybody real quick?
Hi.
Hi. He's gonna go watch, what's it called? Preston Plays with a Z. Some guy like doing, it's on YouTube, watching Minecraft cheats or things. I don't know how the games work and what the kids watch these days. But I asked him if he wanted to try to do this with me. He said he'd rather watch that, so we're gonna let him go do that. I got some stuff wrote down here. Let me see. February 19th, which we just had. I'm going to read some of this stuff with the story, but that was 83 years ago, so we still got some people alive today that were alive back then. And make sure that if you're not old enough to get in and read the description that I wrote, that you have somebody read it to you, maybe talk to you about it a little bit to help explain with the story that we've got. I got a plea that I'm going to read at the end of this thing. We need votes. I need people to vote this time. We got a week left. This story is one I picked, but last week it was the one that you guys picked, and I needed you guys to vote for 2 weeks so we can determine which row and slot, so we can pick a book out of that section for next week. We've only got one vote so far, and once again it's Grammy, so I need some people to vote. Let me see. I went to Bowen's birthday party yesterday. It was a good time. Got to see everybody. Bowen wasn't feeling very well, but he still looked like he enjoyed the gifts. And cake was pretty good. The icing was a little rich. The older I get, the less I like icing, I think. But the cake was really good. Pretty sure I've gained 10 to 15 pounds since November. I'm ready to get back to work, which I get to do tomorrow. Finally. The weather's warming up. Breaking. So we'll finish reading that later. And we're going to open with Don't Sweat the Small Stuff with Your Family by Dr. Richard Carlson. And this is chapter 15, page 40. I learned this trick more than 20 years ago. It has proven day after day, year after year, to be extremely effective in my goal of creating a more peaceful home environment for myself and for others. The basis for this strategy stems from the understanding that when we expect something to occur, we are less surprised and therefore less reactive to it. In addition, when we expect something to happen, that is, when we expect something to spill, and it doesn't, we feel grateful. In other words, we begin to appreciate the fact that a vast majority of the time, the things we are eating and drinking don't get all over the floor. And most of the time, life does go smoothly. The problem is we tend to focus on that annoying expectation. Think back to the last time you or someone in your family spilled a glass of milk or a cup of coffee on the carpet. What was your reaction? In all probability, it involved panic, or disappointment, or a great deal of stress. What do you suppose would happen if, instead of assuming that nothing should or will ever spill, you instead expected the beverage to spill? You accept it as inevitable. It puts an entirely different slant on the same set of facts. This doesn't mean you like it when spills occur, only that it's okay when it does. You accept it. Obviously, you have no idea when the spill is going to occur, only that, in all likelihood, that it will at some point. It might be later today, next week, or 3 years from now, but unless you are a rare exception, you will have spilled milk in your home at some point in the future. This strategy prepares you for this inevitable moment. The same metaphor can easily be extended to virtually any likely daily annoyance at home. Something doesn't work right, something breaks down, some big mess occurs, someone doesn't do his or her part or whatever. The point is, when you do expect something to happen, it won't come as such a surprise when it does. Don't worry that by expecting something to happen, you're going to encourage it to take place, because you're not. You're not talking about visualizing something to happen or encouraging it in any way. We're referring here to the gift of acceptance. Learning to accept things as they are instead of pinning our happiness on the way we demand things to be. Watch what happens when you expect something to spill. I'll bet you'll find yourself far more relaxed the next time it occurs. All right. Set that one back. This is kind of the adult version of what I put in the description, which was for the kids. I probably should have reversed that. But during World War II, the United States forcibly relocated and incarcerated about 120,000 people of Japanese descent. In 10 concentration camps operated by the War Relocation Authority, mostly in the western interior of the country, about 2/3 of them were U.S. citizens. These actions were initiated by Executive Order 9066, issued by President Franklin D. Roosevelt on February 19, 1942, following the outbreak of war with the Empire of Japan in December 1941. About 127,000 Japanese Americans then lived in the continental United States, of which about 112,000 lived on the West Coast. About 80,000 were Nisei, which is the second generation American-born Japanese with U.S. citizenship, and Sansei, third generation, the children of the Nisei. The rest were Issei, which is first generation immigrants born in Japan who were ineligible for citizenship. In Hawaii, where more than 150,000 Japanese Americans comprise more than 1/3 of the territory's population. All right, set that over here. I got this book a while. I've had it, just like some of them, for, probably close to a year better. I got it because I like the author, George Takei. He's a activist. He's an actor that used to play Sulu on Star Trek. He is an American, just like you and me. And he's an activist for a lot of stuff. But he wrote a book called My Lost Freedom, a Japanese-American World War II story. And he autographed the book. And I got a certificate of authenticity. That's his autograph. Let me take this cover off so it doesn't impede our reading the story real quick. Put it back on at the end. And we're going to jump right in. This might take me a little bit. Says, okay, so I am George Takei, an 87-year-old actor. I have lived long and prospered, as we said on the sci-fi television show Star Trek, in which I played Sulu. From my many years of living and acting, I have countless fond memories, some fantastical, some scary, and some amazing. I have memories of soaring through the galaxy driving a starship with a crack team of mates from a small blue planet called Earth. We were all different. We had different skin colors, different backgrounds, and different faiths. Yet we all worked together as a team, all contributing our own unique talent, knowledge, and ideas. We found our strength in our differences, ones that made our lives more interesting, more engaging, and more vibrant. As we said on Star Trek, infinite diversity in infinite combinations. But I also have memories of when our differences became our devastation. When Japan attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, my world turned horribly upside down. I am a Japanese American. My grandparents and my father came to America from Japan. My father spoke both English and Japanese fluently. He was American in every way except for his birthplace. However, our two countries, the United States and Japan, were now at war with each other. America saw us as the enemy simply because we looked like the people who did the bombing. We were seen as different from other Americans. This was unfair. We were Americans who had nothing to do with Pearl Harbor, yet we were imprisoned behind barbed wire fences. I have a happier memory from a time before soldiers took us away to prison camps. My friend Donald had a giggly laugh and soft, curly blonde hair. My hair was black and shinier. We were different, but we had fun playing together. After the soldiers came, I never saw Donald again. I write this book on the wish that my childish friendship with Donald could have grown up to have some kind of bond I enjoyed in the future world of Star Trek. That's a pretty good likeness of him. I am a grandson and son of immigrants. My father was brought to San Francisco when he was a boy by his father, a widower. My mother was born in Sacramento, California, to parents who had immigrated. Like all immigrants to America, my father and my grandparents came to this country boldly seeking a new life and opportunities. This says Mama 10 years old, Daddy 12 years old. I was just 4 years old when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor on the island of Hawaii, and the lives of all Japanese Americans were suddenly and drastically changed. The next day, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt declared war on Japan, February 19, 1942, now commemorated as the Day of Remembrance, was the day that we Japanese Americans will never forget, when the President ordered all Japanese Americans on the West Coast to be rounded up and jailed in prison camps. It was all scary and confusing. I was grateful that Daddy took charge and Mama was brave. This is the story of how they cared for my siblings, Henry, and I think it's Raiko, and me, and kept us safe. This says, let me see, right up here, coming from their radio. From the NBC newsroom in New York, President Roosevelt said in a statement today that the Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, from the air. I repeat, the President Roosevelt says the Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor in Hawaii from the air. Bang, bang, bang. U.S. Army soldiers pounded on the door. They ordered us to leave our home on Garnett Street in Los Angeles. We took only what we could carry and were sent to Santa Anita Racetrack. Each family was assigned a small stall to sleep in, still stinking from the stench of a horse manure. Mama said it was humiliating. Dad remained silent, but I thought it would be fun to sleep where the horses slept. The stalls were full of creepy bugs, flying insects, and germs. Baby Raiko was the first to get sick, and then I did too. Our mama lovingly cared for us. A few months later, we moved again, this time by train. I asked Daddy why. After a while, he said, "We're going on a long vacation in the country." 2 treats, a train ride and a vacation in the country. I thought every vacation by train was had unsmiling soldiers with rifles stationed at both ends of each car. Mama's duffel bag was the best thing about it. Whenever any of us got bored, she reached into that bag and pulled out a lollipop or a picture book or our very own canteen. We journeyed 3 days and 2 nights, and finally our train huffed through the green lushness of Arkansas to our destination, Camp Rower. Roar. The soldiers walked up and down the train aisle, roaring like lions. They didn't scare me at all. They sounded silly. Then one of our young men shouted, "We're approaching Camp Roar right now." That's when the soldiers were trying to say roar. I couldn't believe this was our vacation place. It was a sweltering hot late summer day at Block 6, Barrack 2, Unit F, our new home. Before we went inside, Daddy opened the 3 windows and 1 door to cool the unit down. When we finally entered, a black pot-bellied stove greeted our sweat-drenched family. It was a cruel joke. Mama placed her heavy duffel bag on the top of the suitcase. I show you something now," she stated. She reached in and lifted out a compact wooden box. She pulled on a handle. Up popped her portable sewing machine. Daddy whispered, "This was forbidden. All mechanical things with sharp points and edges are prohibited." "I know," Mama said matter-of-factly, "but children be needing new clothes in camp." Daddy burst out in uncontrollable laughter. Mama joined in, and Henry and I did too, without understanding. Mama plunged into her new task of making a cozy dwelling for us. She found army surplus fabrics and sewed window curtains. She gathered rags, tore them into strips, and braided them into colorful rugs. She asked a kind neighbor, Mr. Yamada, to make a table and tiny chair from scrap lumber. Mama even made sculpture out of twisting and carving plant branches. We on Block 6 were many kinds of people: farmers and fishermen, shopkeepers and doctors, truck drivers and school teachers. We were as young as baby Ryko and as old as 80-year-old Miss Cato. We were a mix of Issy immigrants and American-born Nisi. Some were from hot, dry Arizona. Some were from wet, green Oregon. Most of us from northern, central, and southern California. We were all so different, yet we had one thing in common. We were all Japanese American. We needed to work together as a community. We needed a bond that would tie us together. Daddy spoke Japanese and English fluently, so he could relate to both the immigrants and the American-born generation. Daddy was determined to not allow the gloom, despair, and suppressed anger to take over the camp. He volunteered in all sorts of ways, delivering cots, helping in emergencies, calming down people who were upset. Daddy was elected block manager of Block 6 so that he could represent our issues to the camp administration. Since baseball was popular in Block 6, Daddy suggested building a diamond. Before long, the whole block was cheering at the games. Daddy arranged for Japanese song nights, folk song nights for the elders, and dances for the teenagers. I remember hearing the big band music of Benny Goodman and Tommy Dorsey wafting over the night air as I drifted off to sleep. Camp Rower was a strange and magical place. We'd never seen trees rising out of murky waters or such colorful butterflies. Our block was surrounded by a drainage ditch home to tiny wiggly black fishes. I scooped them into a jar. One morning they had funny bumps. They had lost their tails and their legs popped out. They turned into frogs. But to Mama, everything in Roar was dangerous. "Oh, a bunny, so a bunny," she worried. I began kindergarten at Roar. As we recited "With Liberty and Justice for All" from the Pledge of Allegiance, I could see the fence and a sentry tower right outside my schoolhouse window. I was too young to know that those words were meant the very opposite of being guarded by soldiers in a barbed wire camp. One cold winter morning, I woke up and looked out on a breathtaking sight: soft, new fallen snow. Before long, we had our first and best family snowball fight ever. A perfect way to get ready for Christmas. On Christmas Day, we waited eagerly in the mess hall. Ho, ho, ho! In waddled Santa Claus. But he looked nothing like Santa Claus. He was Japanese. A fake Japanese Santa. I kept the secret to myself because the other kids were so happy to meet this Santa. Maybe the soldiers had kept out the real Santa. We had been at Roar for a year when the government changed its mind. Now they needed our young men and women to serve in the war. But all of us Japanese Americans had been classified as enemy aliens. How could enemies serve as U.S. soldiers? Everyone in camp over the age of 17 had to answer a list of questions. For Daddy and Mama, those were trick questions, especially for number 27 and number 28. Daddy and Mama thought that the two questions were stupid. The only honest answers were no and no. Those who answered yes were drafted by the government to fight for America and Europe. My parents, by answering firmly and honestly, were branded disloyal and forced to leave Camp Roar. We would be sent back across the country to a harsher camp called Camp Tool Lake in Northern California. Camp Tule Lake was called a segregation camp for disloyals. It was nothing like the lush and verdant swampland of Camp Roar. Tule Lake was a maximum security prison with 3 layers of barbed wire fences, sentry towers equipped with machine guns pointed right at us, and huge rumbling tank patrols. Tule Lake was the largest of the 10 prisons and held the most inmates, more than 18,000 people. Half were children like Henry, Ryko, and me. Once again, Mama began making a cozy home out of our tar paper barrack. Daddy specially ordered linoleum for our cold, dusty floor. I loved being close to the mess hall because Henry and I could be the first in line for our meals. But Mama hated all the noise and smells. Stink terrible, she complained. It's a trade-off, Daddy comforted her. Now we have 2 small rooms for the 5 of us. There were other pluses. Movies were shown at the mess hall. For a few hours, the movies in my imagination helped me escape our narrow lives. Excuse me. One afternoon, Henry and I saw a shaggy black dog behind a pile of vegetable crates. He looked so hungry we convinced our cook, Mr. Kikatuni, to give him a piece of wiener teriyaki. The dog gobbled it up so quickly we knew he was still hungry. We took him to our unit and begged Mama for cookies. The dog made a ruckus, but once he gave Mama a great big doggy smile, she let him stay. We had a new friend, our dog Blackie. We built a doghouse for him. He escorted us to school and patiently waited for us. He even made friends with Mr. Kikatuni, who eventually sneaked tidbits for him after dinner. Smart dog, that Blackie. He made living in Tule Lake so much better.
Papa, are you done?
Not yet, buddy. Just a little bit longer, okay? At Tule Lake, there were young men who were seething with anger at the government for calling them disloyal. They said, if you're going to treat us like the enemy, well then, we'll show you what kind of enemy you have to deal with. Each morning, the radicals jogged around the block chanting, "Washoy, washoy, washoy." Then they ran off and hid in their barracks. One night, angry soldiers came roaring into the camp in jeeps, their rifles aimed right at us. They were looking for radicals. But more often than not, innocent men were thrown in jail. I remember hearing women crying and wailing. Then I asked Daddy about the radicals, and he said, in a democracy, the people have the right to assemble and protest. Half a world away, even more bewildering events were taking place. Young men who had answered yes, yes to question 27 and 28, brothers and cousins of the radicals, had become U.S. soldiers in the all-Japanese American 442nd Regimental Combat Team. They were wearing the same uniforms as the sentry tower guards staring down at us. They were fighting heroically on a far-off European battlefield carrying the American flag. In yet another part of the world across the Pacific, unimaginable events were taking place as well. The atomic bomb had been dropped on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The 2 bombings were the most ghastly devastation the world had ever experienced. We were imprisoned at Tule Lake. We, imprisoned at Tule Lake, knew nothing about the bombings because newspapers and radios were forbidden. But there were vague, uncertain rumors that were painfully personal. Mama's parents had returned to Japan, to Hiroshima. Mama was frantic with worry. However, we were now adjusting to the news that the hard, terrible war was over. America was celebrating the victory. Suddenly, the government was releasing us from camp as abruptly as we'd been imprisoned. After 4 years behind barbed wire, we had nothing because the U.S. government had taken everything. Each of us was given $25 and a one-way ticket to anywhere in the United States. My daddy and mama said, let's start all over in Los Angeles, even though they had heard that our old hometown was still hostile to Japanese Americans. Daddy left first to find a job and place where we could stay. After 10 anxiety-filled weeks, Mama told us we'd join Daddy now in Los Angeles. We were excited and sad at the same time. Tule Lakes had become a home to us. Now we were leaving our friends, our community, the rugged scenery, and our beloved Blackie. It was a long night's train journey to Los Angeles. As the train got closer, Mama, Henry, Ryko, and I saw magnificent buildings in the sky, and one soared above them all. That Los Angeles City Hall, tallest building in the city, said Mama. That where Daddy and Mama married, she told us proudly. On the platform, Henry and I shouted, Daddy. Our enthusiastic hugs knocked him right over. We were all together, a family again, back in our hometown, ready to build our new future. The end. Just some pretty interesting stuff here in the back of the book. It's got some pictures of some of the internment camps and him and his family. Can't really read all this stuff, but there's a lot of stuff in here. After the war, the end of World War II was not the end of our struggles. For us kids, the worst came after we returned to Los Angeles. I might go over this. I might pre-read this. I might put it back in there and maybe read it a different time, but some of this is a little more probably personal and historically accurate, and it may not be for kids. I think he wrote this book, this story, so that everybody can learn. It's important that we learn history, right? They say so we don't repeat it. I'm not going to get into all of that, but I'm glad that he wrote this book. It was a good story, and I think it's important for all of us to remember this stuff, because just like the things that happened during the German War, the things that happen with the Japanese is really important, and what our government does to our own people. What makes good Americans is the fact that we embrace diversity and inclusion. We love and empathize with everybody that lives here of all different kinds of backgrounds. When you know better, you learn better. Have somebody read the description that I wrote to you. I'm going to set this aside. Move on. I'm going to get stuck, okay? We're going to, our last closing reading is going to be from Life's Journeys According to Mr. Rogers. And this says, I remember one of my seminary professors saying people who were able to appreciate others, who looked for what was good and healthy and kind, were about as close as you could get to God, to the eternal good. And those people who were always looking for what was bad about themselves and others were really on the side of evil. That's what evil wants, he would say. Evil wants us to feel so terrible about who we are and who we know that we'll look with condemning eyes on anybody who happens to be with us at that moment. I encourage you to look for the good where you are and embrace it. More than 1,500 years ago, the Roman philosopher Boethius wrote this sentence. O happy race of mortals, in your hearts are ruled, as in the universe, by love. On the page here, stick that over here. That'll go back in the rotation with the other one. Like I was saying earlier, I wrote this plea. It's kind of just notes, so it's a little scribbly. This is a plea to the universe. There's a lot of people going through it right now. So this plea is that the universe will allow everyone to make the best possible decisions they can that will provide the best probability of success for them moving forward. That's for all of us. There's a lot of struggle out in the world right now, especially some in our own close circles. We still need votes, like I brought up at the beginning. Only one person's voted so far, so I need some votes. We vote all the way to next story time. So Grammy's the only one I think that's voted so far. So you vote for row 1 or row 2, and then for slot A, B, C, or D, and we'll choose a book from that section to read next week. There are plenty of people that need our hope and positivity right now. Grandma Lovey, her mom, and her sister, and Uncle Chris, especially as of last night. Those are the ones that were on my heart when I wrote this. So, get to go back to work tomorrow, and me and Nate get to go to Jace's birthday party and see his cousins, the grandkids, my boys. Stick that over here. Look, check this out before I do this last thing. Jace's birthday present. Looks a little like a hat, don't it? Okay, what else we got left to do? Oh yeah, we do our thing and then our card. I'm gonna flip this back around real quick, and I'll be back when the week is new, and I'll bring more ideas for you, and you'll have things you'll want to do, and I will too. I'll think of you when I'm not here, 'cause thinking of people makes them seem near. The friends who know you love you cheerfully, and I do too. Snatch our card. Come over here. What has been the biggest change you've experienced in your lifetime? There's a lot. I think this kind of goes along with the one that we did a couple of weeks ago. And originally I put moving to Washington and getting clean and turning my life around. But I think that there was a more important time that I changed. And I don't know how to explain it, but it helped me unlearn a lot of the stuff, even the more mild parts of what was wrong with me as a person, because there was some, there still is. Like, nobody's perfect, but the way that I viewed other people. Anyways, I walked into a movie theater in Washington, and I watched the documentary special, not the movie with Tom Hanks, but the documentary special on Mr. Rogers, and something clicked in my head and clicked in my heart, and I changed again, and I didn't know that was possible. And it gave me a brand new lease on my perspective for how I view other people, how I empathize with people that are struggling, even if it doesn't affect me directly. I think it's important. I used to be pretty discriminatory and racist in my characteristics, and now it helped me change how I love others. Thank you, Mr. Rogers, for that. And put the card back over here, and I think that's it, guys. We are done. I love you guys for being exactly who you're supposed to be, and you're the only one that gets to decide that. And remember that our minds, just like our books, work better when they're open. So true. I love you. See you next week.